Thank you. Welcome to another year of conversations. I'm very happy to see everybody, and I'm Martha Teichner, and this is Alisa Weilerstein, as I would assume everybody in this audience already knows. So, start at the beginning. How did Fragments was a COVID project, but tell the story.
The genesis was in December of 2020, and so I was just basically practicing scales in my bedroom, and it's not often that inspiration sort of strikes like a flash, but that was a moment, and I was, just had some time to really think very deeply about what really brings us together, and what really communicates about music that we know really well, and what communicates about music that's being composed today. And how do we bring it all together, and how do we bring the voices of today together? Because there's so many, it's a very interesting time because there's so many acceptable styles of writing. I mean, as you know, let's say if you were writing contemporary music in the 70s or 80s, you weren't taken seriously if you didn't write in a certain way, but that's not true anymore. And so I had the idea of, okay, what if we could bring modernists with neo-Baroque composers, or people who are doing special sort of effects. I mean, all acoustic. I wasn't interested in electronic music, but just I wanted to get all of these disparate styles of music put together. And then I wound up just scribbling ideas down on paper, and this eventually ended with me commissioning 27 composers. The youngest at the time was 25, and the oldest was 84. Some names that you would know, such as Osvaldo Golijov. It's a great friend, and we've worked together quite a lot, and he graciously wrote a beautiful, beautiful piece for the project. And also Joan Towers, someone I know, Thomas Larcher, so names that are familiar, as well as up-and-coming names, and also names that you may not have heard of for what, some reason or other.
How did you pick them out? How did you select the 27? I know there were originally 28, but how did you pick them?
There are 28, including Bach. So, so 27 live ones and one dead one. But I started with people that I knew, and then I did a lot of listening. And I also got recommendations from people that I knew well and that I trusted, from musician colleagues as well as composer friends and colleagues. And so I wound up having these really interesting conversations with every single one of them. And I asked them all to do exactly the same thing, which was to write up to 10 minutes of solo cello music in 2 or 3 movements, fragments, that could stand alone, because my intention was, and I was very clear about this up front, my intention was to reorder them and to interweave them with one another, as well as with the Bach suites.
Why did you want to interweave them with Bach, as opposed to having each one, like the first 5 minutes of the concert, the first 10 minutes, so-and-so, and then the next one, the next person, and so on, completely distinct from one another?
Well, 2 things. It goes back to what I said. I wanted to bring everyone together in a way that shows kind of a mosaic of what's being composed today. But in an artistic musical sense, I wanted to create 6 distinct programs, 6 arcs, and the only sort of criteria that I was going to use was what makes sense musically to put together. So, I mean, there's a lot of this music which. A little bit chicken before the egg syndrome, but I mean, I was imagining what was going to come out, and that some of the music was really going to relate to Bach and maybe even a specific suite, and some was really not. And when the composers asked me whether they should relate to Bach, almost everyone did, by the way, my answer was always only if the spirit moves you. But really, my only criteria is the timing, and so because I'm trying to create 6 programs, each about an hour long.
Why Bach? Why around Bach?
Well, Bach is timeless. and it's also rightly the most beloved music for solo cello. For me, I think Bach sounds, I think all of the music Bach sounds as contemporary as anything that's being written today, as innovative and as inspired, as moving, and it also, conveniently is like a chameleon. It really, you can kind of do anything with it. It's so malleable. And
What do you mean by that?
It works with every composer. Well, and the reason for that is, of course, that most of Western classical music written since Bach takes Bach as a kind of inspiration in some way or other, some way, shape, or form. Maybe a very distant one, but you can always find it in there.
What does Bach, as a person or as a composer, but also just because you perform Bach and have recorded Bach and so on and so forth, what does Bach mean to you?
It's a lifelong relationship, and sometimes very frustrating one, because I feel like that this must be played, and yet I feel like I can never do it justice. And I know I'm not alone in that feeling. It's probably any musician who has a relationship with Bach feels that way. So in a way, it's almost sacred, and yet it's the most human music. So it's all these contradictions, and it's as I said, it's the most malleable, the most heartfelt, and yet the most intellectual. And so it's all of these kinds of extremes for me.
How do you feel when you play Bach?
I can give you an example. I did the complete suites in the Elbphilharmonie in Hamburg, in the big hall. It was and it was sold out. It was 2,000 people, and it's I'm sure you've seen images if you haven't necessarily been there, but it's the stage is down and then the audience is above. At the same time, though, I felt like I was on top of a mountain under the stars, just meditating, and it was an incredibly spiritual experience.
Huh.
Yeah.
How old were you when you first started playing Bach cello suites?
I first started learning the suites when I was, 7 or 8 years old or something like that. Yeah. Because like the G major suite, for example, on the surface, it's not technically terribly complicated. Of course, to make it sound good, it's much harder than playing, Prokofiev's Sinfonia Concertante in a sense, to really make the G major suite sound as pure as I want it to sound. But note-wise, in terms of where you put your fingers down, it's deceptively simple, but it's not, if you have a bit of training, you can play the notes. And so it's part of anyone's early training to learn the first couple of suites at least, and then the sixth suite usually comes a bit later.
Is it like a teenager trying to play King Lear?
A little bit. But it's interesting you mentioned that. But I've always related Bach to Shakespeare as well.
Really?
Somehow. Yeah. Huh. Yeah. Absolutely. The fifth suite for me is King Lear all over. The isolation,
in a sense,
the heartbreak.
with this project, you had to have Bach in it, in a sense.
For me, there was no question that it had to be. I wasn't sure how it was going to integrate it until I had all of the music to play with and to put the programs together. But yes, that was an essential part.
How big, Bach aside, how big is the solo cello repertoire that you are busy enlarging?
Well, it's teeny tiny right now, but now it has 27 new pieces in it, so that's great. Yeah.
So did you give people a deadline?
Yes. But miraculously, almost everybody was on time. Including, and I say this with a lot of love, my dear friend Osvaldo, who is not known for being on time, but he was actually very early.
Oh, I can remember he was writing a piece for chamber music, and I was trying to interview him to get ready for one of these. And
he was busy writing.
And he and the St. Lawrence String Quartet were busy concocting. He hadn't finished it the night before he was playing it. It was
this happened to me with when he revised his cello concerto Azul, and I was getting updates like the day of the concert, the day of the premiere. No, it was fun. It's a wild ride with him. It was just wonderful.
When they started coming in, did you have any idea what you were going to do with them, or were they just coming in?
Both. Yeah, somehow in a way that was one of the things I enjoyed most, was putting these puzzles together, and sometimes I would start by learning the pieces and then putting them aside, and then just kind of improvising with them and like trying to find the connections. Sometimes, choosing which program they were going to go in, which suite they might relate to, even unintentionally. Or sometimes it was very clear that there were pieces that very intentionally related to a certain suite. It happened quite organically. I tried not to. At first, I just tried to let instinct take over, because I knew if I was going to overthink it, that I would never get anywhere. And so I would start sort of big picture, things that made sense, things that didn't make sense, and then I would kind of go from macro to micro, if you know what I mean, in terms of the detail.
Did they essentially tell you which program they needed to be in together? You give them titles, the program's titles, the Wonder and Tumult.
That came very recently, the titles. So
really?
Yeah, my intention actually very early on was not to have any sort of narrative. I started working with Elkanah Politzer here, who is here, delightfully so, about kind of 9 months into the whole process. I already had the composers committed to the project, but we discussed how what this was going to look like and what kind of thing we were going to put together. I remember very early on we discussed about the set, that there was always going to be a room that traveled with me, and a fragmented room. And so the set is a constant, and that each composer was going to have their own lighting. For example, if you might have noticed Fragments 1, for example, a wonderful composer, Alison Loggins Hall, wrote me a 3-movement piece, and there was a very distinct lighting pattern. Her first movement comes kind of early on to the program, then the third comes very centrally, it's very fiery, and then her second very reflective movement comes towards the end, and those color blocks, they return. Her language is very distinctive, and her visual language that Elkanah and Seth Reeser, our wonderful lighting and set designer, developed. So there were things like that we developed. But in terms of how the arcs relate to one another, this came much, much, much later.
Why did you feel you wanted a set and the various forms of rooms, fragmented rooms, to go with it, as opposed to just sitting on an empty stage?
The idea was that no matter where I was, that my room was going to travel with me. And so this was something that Elkanah and I discussed quite a lot. And when I was first creating the project, it was a time of real isolation and a craving of connection. I mean, that's the reason. That's being any artist and any musician. It's only connect, like the E.M. Forster phrase, right? But that's what I really crave with this project. That's what its aim is, to connect these composers' voices, to connect the very familiar with the very new, and to connect the art forms of classical concert music with the world of theater, and to bring our art forms into our world today. And so the idea that I was sitting in my room thinking about these things and unifying all of these fragments, that's what the set and the lighting speaks to.
And how did you arrive at the idea of the architectural blocks that change color?
Well, this was Elkanah and Seth. This is their this was their wonderful, genius visual response to the music. So basically, what the process was, I learned the pieces, I created the programs, and I would send them recordings, and so that they kind of marinate on these pieces. And then we had 3 very intensive tech workshops. So each of the 3 focused on 2 programs. So the first one was in San Diego. I had actually just had my second daughter, and she was, I think, not even 3 months old. And so we teched in San Diego, which wasn't far from where we lived part-time. And we had 4 days together where we, they were building light cues, and we were talking about, we were talking about what we were really doing. And their visual response was so, and remains so, it's so organic to the music. I still find it so touching how that all came together.
Did it surprise you?
Yeah, completely. I mean, I didn't know what to expect. I've never worked with the world of theater before until now, and so this has been an incredibly wonderful, inspiring learning experience for me.
Watching you yesterday come out into the dark.
Oh, you could see me? I wasn't sure.
Sitting, you could vaguely see you
Okay.
coming and sitting and your cello,
Yeah.
and thinking, "Gee, I hope she doesn't trip." And
No, we practiced that.
and sitting down, and
Yeah.
I found myself thinking, "Gosh, it is terrifying to think of doing a solo recital on a stage all by yourself." It's a kind of a nakedness that would be absolutely terrifying, and there you are. But there is this. The first one, it looked like your own Stonehenge.
That's right. Yeah.
And
Very protected.
and I just wonder, A, how it normally feels when you're on a bare stage all by yourself and a huge concert hall, and B, what it's like when you are encircled by these architectural elements and the lights.
I can't see what the audience sees. So I mean, I vaguely know when the cues are changing, but I can't. From where I sit, I don't see everything.
So you're
I
not
know what's
seeing
there.
blue and orange, and you don't see.
I mean, I know what's happening, but I can't see it in real time the way you can, because I mean, the boxes are mostly behind me. So and the shadows are behind me, so I don't see them. But you're calling it terrifying, but I really love this feeling. I love the feeling of being alone on stage.
Is it terrifying for you or not?
No. I really love that feeling. I'm kind of weird, but yeah,
What
I love that feeling.
What is the actual feeling?
Being on a mountain under the stars, meditating. It's communicating in a very direct, maybe the most direct level that I can with an audience.
Because it's entirely different from when you're communicating in
chamber music. Yes, but it's just completely different, which I love doing, and I love playing concertos with orchestra, which is, I mean, to me, it's just chamber music on a large scale. But I love the kind of there's no hiding when you're alone on stage. But in terms of the position of the sets, the first one, I mean, I was in a very beautiful dress designed by Molly Ireland, our wonderful costume designer. And the idea is that I'm very young. The music mostly is very pure. And there are a lot of very young composers on that program. And ironically, it starts with a piece by Joan Tower, who of course is not. She is the oldest composer on this, but I've always found her music to have such a wonderful truthfulness and earnestness. And I just thought this belongs on a program that has this kind of purity and wonder, hence the title. The first suite is like this kind of rosebud, which is it's the shortest suite of the 6 by far. It's only 18 minutes long, and there's there's something sort of bare and very pure about it, and so it just sort of naturally fit with the pieces that I put together there.
I felt when I was watching it, when you'd get back to Bach after the various
Sunrise
digressions, it was almost ecstatic.
Yes, thank you for saying so. I think so. Yeah, I like the idea of putting the prelude last, something that everyone knows, you might have heard it in a mall, or might have heard it in a movie. It's one of the few classical pieces that have crossed into the mainstream. And so after a kind of, you have this really kind of virtuosic party piece, which is the penultimate work. It's by Venezuelan composer Reynaldo Moya. And then you come to the prelude, and it's like the sun rising. Mm-hmm. But it's in a very familiar, very comfortable place. And then you have two, which breaks everything down.
And you come out in your punk outfit.
Yeah, that's fun.
Are these costumes fun?
Oh, they're so much fun. They're so much fun. I'm having such a blast. Yeah.
And the whole idea of doing the makeup and the
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. So.
And how did you concoct all the costumes?
This was also a very collaborative effort with Elkanah and Seth, and Elkanah, of course, brought Molly on board as well. Mm-hmm. And we also created bespoke hair and makeup looks for each one. So each one is its own very distinct world.
So did somebody say, oh, and she has to have fishnet stockings?
Well, if you're going to go punk, I mean, you got to go all the way. So,
and
combat boots,
the Doc Martens, and
yes.
That had to be fun. It just
it was super fun. And then I don't want to give too much away, because I love having a bit of an element of surprise, as you know, with this. But each one, it's different life stages. You wonder, there's a young girl coming for an audition or something, if you like. The second is rebelling against everything. The third, emergence, and it's very confident, very outward-facing music. And the third suite is also, I think, just a very regal character. And the fourth is Labyrinth, and it's also, again, very different costume. And the position of the set, it's almost as if I'm sitting on a pyre. The boxes, you'll see our position kind of behind me, and it looks like I'm kind of sitting on top of them. And the fifth is Lament. It's, again, very, very different feel. And the sixth is the fifth's opposite, in a sense. It's called Radiance, and so it's very benevolent and ecstatic. I like that word. It's kind of bringing things back. Mm-hmm.
Did any of the composers, did you have any sense that after they got commissioned, they kind of found out who each other might be and called each other up and talked?
If they did, I don't know about it. Some did ask me who they were going to be with or which suite they were going to be with. And
did everybody know who the others were?
No.
Oh.
No. Huh. I was a bit cheeky about that too, because so many asked, and I said, and sometimes in the very beginning I said, I don't know, but if I did know, I wouldn't tell you.
How many were... How many were women?
It is 14 women and 13 men.
Was that a goal to
yes.
have a number of women?
It was, first of all, composers that I love and respect, and that I like their music. And yes, of course, having a gender-balanced group, and also it's a highly varied racial and ethnic, as well as age and stage of career. These were very, very important to me.
What as I was looking at the names and reading the bios after using the QR code and so on and so forth, it occurred to me that at a certain point, when you look at, you talked about how in the 70s maybe you had to adhere to a certain type of composing, and now it's much more varied and so on and so forth. And it occurred to me that looking at the array and how it plays out on stage, that I found myself wondering, now who of these composers are the ones who will endure? Who will have a life after their lives? Who will be the Bach coming forward? Yeah. And in a sense, I wonder whether you thought about that in your choice of composers, and also how you juxtaposed them with Bach. And did you get an insight into, as you gathered 27 different compositions, this one's going to endure?
I mean, I would never reveal what my subjective opinions are about that, but I mean, of course, I have my favorites. And I mean, luckily I got 27 wonderful pieces, and I couldn't be more thrilled, and it was a really, it's a really moving thing to receive so many pieces, and having asked everyone to do exactly the same thing, same person, same project, and to get such different, such disparate types of works. But yeah, I mean, I think luckily, I think there are actually several that will really have a legacy.
Did you get a sense of, oh, these are the correct, I'm not asking you to name which ones you think will endure or not, but did you get a sense of, I understand, or I think I have a better insight into what will last, and maybe some of those ingredients?
I think that actually remains to be seen, to be honest. And it's interesting also getting feedback from people that colleagues that I know and trust, as well as audience members who may have, let's say, how can I put this, not have been so keen on contemporary music, but were very moved by X piece, and somebody who may not have been exposed to so much contemporary music, but are now very interested in certain composers that were part of the project. And so that's very interesting to me. But I think the jury's still out on that.
But there's also the factor of only by getting played and played again does a person have even the possibility of being remembered. And
no question.
That had to have gone through your mind at some point.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so one of the things that, the project has many aims, but it's also to support the music of today and to support many wonderful voices, which, sometimes I personally feel I've not gotten enough support. And so toward the end of the project, I have planned to record all 27 pieces, but in their original forms, not in the fragmented programmed version, but as they were originally written, so that they can really have a legacy. We are also even talking about having an edition with an annotated edition with performance notes accessible for students, so that these can really go into the repertoire. And the other thing, which has already happened, is that our last workshop was actually at the San Francisco Conservatory, and I did 2 master classes where the students, there were several students who were assigned some of the pieces from the project, and I was actually teaching these pieces, and that was, it almost made me sort of weepy that this was like, they've already crossed that threshold. And other people are playing them, analyzing them, studying them, and adding them to the repertoire, and that students were really enjoying them. And so that's a real impact that the project can have.
So they're being recorded individually. And are the fragments being recorded as well?
Fragments programs? Filmed, yeah.
And just filmed, but not necessarily recorded for Spotify or something like that?
It wouldn't really work. What we've built together with the story, really, of these programs, it doesn't work as an audio recording. It works as a video.
You missed
extra
dimension.
I can't imagine the fragments programs as without the visual elements. It doesn't, without the set, without the story, without the depth of the visual response of Elkanah and Seth, it's impossible.
You've made a point of not giving people loads of information in advance. And that's discussed in the program book and so on and so forth. Why did you do that? And do people find it uncomfortable, or do they just sort of roll with it?
Well, some people find it uncomfortable. I think people who, forgive me for saying so, maybe I'm speaking out of school, but sometimes our most devoted classical music audience is sometimes uncomfortable with this, because it's not what we are used to. We are used to having all of the information in front of us before we've heard anything. And that's something, personally, which I'm mad at myself sometimes that I try to research something so much before I've ever heard anything, and then I already have an idea of what it's going to sound like. even if I've never heard it before. So I was trying to do away with that, especially when you're hearing so many new voices, some of whom are going to be very unfamiliar. And I thought it would be better to let the composers speak to the audience first, and then get the information afterwards.
So you're busting preconceptions.
Trying, yeah. Yeah.
Do people find themselves confused at the idea that this is contemporary music paired with Bach? Because it doesn't necessarily fit their concept of contemporary music.
That aspect less, because many people, to their credit, have done wonderful projects with Bach and contemporary music. I mean, I'm certainly not the first, nor will I be the last to do that. But this is I think there are not too many that are doing it in this way.
Why did you feel the need to do this? To chop up the pieces up and juxtapose them and to present them seamlessly without explanation? Are you trying to make people hear differently, see differently? I mean, what's the hope that you can achieve with it?
I think about experiences where I've personally been the most moved, and that's sometimes when you can just let go and listen and experience, watch, and experience something in a very visceral way. And that's really what I was after through the whole project. And again, it all comes back to connection, connecting these voices together, seeing how they relate to one another or not, seeing how they relate to the Bach or not, and how the textures relate to one another, and the kinds of new connections that form in your brain when you're just listening without expectation.
You talk about it a little bit in the essay in the program book, but the idea of finding a new way to reach audiences, a new way to have audiences look at classical music. I mean, we look here, and there are not that many people under 60, and you have a need for a new audience.
Yes, we do.
Does this go somewhere along that road?
I mean, always. Everything we do, we want to expand our reach into new audiences. But yes, one of the goals was to connect our art form, which I believe is one of the greatest art forms, objectively speaking, of course. But it's connecting it with our contemporary world. And I was thinking about that quite a lot while putting the project together.
One of the things that struck me, and we talked a little bit about this before, it occurred to me, well, even today, I had chamber music at 11 o'clock. During the Beethoven, there were little visual effects floating around on the curtain. There were these light effects.
Yes.
And at the Opera Thais, there were massive projections. And your show has light that changes color, comes out of the boxes, and so on, and from above and below. And recently I went to a program at the New York Philharmonic,
Yes, you were saying.
which was called Brightness of Light, which was Renee Fleming and another singer who were doing a program built around the letters of Alfred Stieglitz and Georgia O'Keeffe, and it had massive projections of his photographs, her paintings, photographs of them throughout their lives, and the letters themselves. And I can't conceive of that show without those projections.
That's right.
And in fact, at one point, the New York Phil did not want to do it. They didn't want to spend the money. And Renee Fleming had to convince them they had to find a donor. The guy who did the projections, who's a neighbor of mine, volunteered to do it all free, just because everybody said, no, you have to have the projections.
Yes.
But it seems to me that it wasn't so very long ago that something like what you're doing, something like that, something like the projections at Thais would have been inconceivable to a classical audience. But now it's part of the vocabulary.
And I think it's a good thing. I mean, to have a really immersive experience. Why should we not have it?
When did it happen?
So,
When did that?
I don't know. I don't know when it exactly happened.
I mean, every kid who goes to a rock concert is
Yeah.
going to see incredibly sophisticated visual pyrotechnics.
Yeah.
And they grow up expecting it. But it's almost like the classical audience has sort of finally not quite
yet.
up.
Mostly, it's like it's still rare to find it. It's sort of an event when it is there. But I think it's, in most of my experience, lighting is sort of an afterthought in our world, which I think is a shame. It makes no sense that you just see the sort of blanket white light over an orchestra.
Yeah. Staging and costumes are non-existent.
It's not for us.
Do you think it's gotten to the point where it's automatic or will be pretty much in the future expected? The very fact that you're not recording a record of fragments, you do want it to be video and film.
I mean, we're an increasingly visual society. So yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next 10, 20 years about that.
How much cost does it add to do this sort of thing? Huge.
Next question. It's anything with lighting and with set with the production costs are. I mean, there's a reason why opera is the most expensive art form. It's very expensive.
Now, I mean, I've felt that everybody yesterday, talking to people after 1 and 2 and so on, there was a complete acceptance of
it's so good
what
to
you're
hear.
trying to
Thank
do.
you.
But I'm sitting here, and the research I did, I looked at, there was a Washington Post.
Oh yeah, he didn't like it.
He didn't. It occurred when I read this, I kept thinking he didn't get it.
No, he didn't get it.
And was completely hidebound.
Yes.
And what he says here is, the problem with Fragments is that as much as it wants to direct listeners to the focus on the present moment, and as valiantly as it tries, the music itself remains stubbornly representative of a much darker moment, i.e. its COVID core. And he also is uncomfortable with the
Thank you.
subdividing it, and also the staging of it. And I kept thinking, he just doesn't get it.
Yeah.
What was your reaction when this came out?
Exactly what you say. Well, he doesn't get it. It's too bad. Let's move on.
As you've done 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4, and then
5 and 6 will premiere here. Yeah.
How is that kind of evolution? Has your sense of it changed in the course of seeing it on stages all over, going from 1 and 2 and to 2 and 3 or to 3 and 4 and so on?
Yes, and in fact, it's what I'm doing here is actually this is the first time I'm doing all 6 of them in less than 1 week, and so kind of experiencing these changes in very real time, in a very sort of compressed period of time. This is a really fascinating experience for me.
In what way?
It's hard to describe. I mean, purely in the musical sense. I've of course I've internalized the whole project, but it is 27 pieces and all 6 Bach suites, so it's just a huge amount of music. It's like I feel like I'm kind of doing, it's like a ring cycle or something, and so it's just it's a massive amount, and yet going through the 2 programs last night, I don't want to sound like I'm speaking out of turn, but it didn't feel that huge to me somehow. These individual programs didn't feel huge because they feel part of something much larger. And so I didn't necessarily expect that. So those are the first 2 steps in the journey. And as I said before, my original intention was not to have a narrative. I was sort of anti that. I didn't want to put thoughts into people's heads, and yet a narrative did emerge. From wonder to tumult to emergence, labyrinth, lament, and radiance. It's a very clear sort of life trajectory. And so I kind of feel like I'm in the middle of that right now.
It also seemed, I don't know whether you feel it, but just watching you, it's almost like as you work your way through each program and each fragment within the program, that it's almost like exploring parts as an actress.
Yeah, surely. You know, this, in two, I mean, we've all been through rebellious periods of our lives, and not only when we're teenagers, even though let's say that's the most obvious place, but yeah, it's not me right now, I wouldn't say, but it's I mean, it's certainly it's. In a sense, it's acting, but in a sense, it's not really. I mean, it's accessing a part of myself that I experienced. Say,
how many years do you think you're going to be touring this?
The intention at the moment is another 5 years. Yeah.
And will you do all 6, or will you continue to do 2 and 2 and 2?
It depends. So I mean, like in Spoleto is, you know, very movingly so. It's the first place to present all 6 all at once. I'm going to be in residence at the South Bank Center next season, and they're doing 4 programs in one season, so 2 in the fall and 2 in the spring. Carnegie Hall has been a partner. They've taken on all 6, but it's over a period of 3 years. So it goes a bit like that. But it's having its coming out party, if you like, in Europe next season, and Asia the following season. So we're at a really kind of fun point right now, because I mean there's been a lot building. It's gotten a lot of traction already, but now it's really expanding into the world.
Are you able to do your regular concert?
Oh yes.
Regime that you.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. No, I mean which includes plenty of concerto engagements as well as and more conventional recitals, cello and piano, and also even doing just recitals with the complete Bach suites, that kind of thing.
Is it hard to switch gears?
No.
Really?
I enjoy switching gears. I'm happiest when I'm wearing many hats.
Huh.
Yeah. So that's one of the great joys. I've always been, let's say, a bit restless, and I never liked playing the same concerto all season, as my manager knows. So it's
the wearing many hats.
I like wearing many hats.
It makes me reminds me that you're a widely traveled cellist. Your husband is a widely traveled conductor.
Correct.
You have 2 little kids.
Yes, we do.
And you have to manage type 1 diabetes all at the same time. Tell us a little about what it's like to live your life.
Well, I wake up in the morning. No. My husband is music director of the Montreal Symphony as well as San Diego Symphony, and we reside between those 2 cities. Montreal, say principally, that's where our girls go to school. And no, we just have to be very organized in terms of the calendars. And I also, I'm very, and I feel very lucky that I can afford to be. I'm quite selective about the work that I take, and so that I'm really present at home. And
do you stagger your away time with Raphael and you?
No. Oh, we schedule out maybe a year and a half to 2 years ahead.
But do you do it so that you're home when he's away and he's home when you're away?
Well, then we would never be together if we did
that
way.
True.
So
I was just thinking in terms of kid time.
No, but we organize it so that the family is together as much as possible. That's priority number 1, of course. But also, I mean, in a way, his schedule is slightly easier to manage because, being music director of a place means that you're actually home, and he's music director in the places where we live. So that makes the family planning much easier.
I remember you telling me that when you were in San Diego, you enrolled the kids in a French school in San Diego, as well as Montreal, so that they had the continuity.
Yeah, that's correct. And now that there's a larger time commitment for him in Montreal, so we've decided to just that they go to school exclusively in Montreal, and they're in a Lycée Français program, which is international too, so that for example, Raphael does maybe one opera every season, and so which requires several weeks in one place. But there are lycées français everywhere, so we can park in those places too.
Your dad, a violinist, your mother, a pianist, your brother.
Can't get away from these people.
What was it like growing up in your house?
Well, I thought it was normal. It was my normal. But no, it was just a total immersion environment of music. And my father was the first violinist of the Cleveland Quartet for 20 years. And some of my earliest memories, he left the quartet when I was 7, but some of my earliest memories are just of the quartet rehearsing in the house kind of constantly. And my mom played with them quite a bit, and my parents also played together. They still play together quite a bit. And so they were just, it was music all the time.
Did you become a cellist because they needed a cellist?
I've been asked that before. But no, actually, I always enjoyed listening to them practice, and we listened to music together all the time. And the sort of longer story of how I got sort of attracted to the cello was, I heard it all the time, but I was around 2.5 at a certain point, and my parents were both away on tour. My grandmother was taking care of me, and I got chickenpox, conveniently, and she made a string quartet of instruments out of cereal boxes. So the cello was a Rice Krispies box. There were 2 violins and a viola, in which I shunned, with no interest in those at all. And the cello had an old green toothbrush for an end pin. And the bow was basically any stick that I could find, something from outside or chopstick or whatever. And I just banged around on this thing when they came home from their respective tours, and they would rehearse in the house again. And then at a certain point, I realized that this wasn't making any sound. So when I was 4, I asked my mom for a real cello and a cello teacher.
And of course, because they were musicians, they said yes.
Not right away, actually.
Really?
Yeah, they said, "No, you're too young. You're too small." What? And then I kept asking, and then I got my wish. I was around 4.5 when I started.
Do your girls play anything yet?
Yeah. So my older daughter, she's 9, and she plays violin and she plays piano.
Is she 9 already?
Yeah, I know, it's weird. And my younger daughter is 3, so she thinks she plays everything, but she both very strong personalities. So yeah.
Having commissioned the Fragments with 27 composers, that's a really ambitious project. Do you have the next ambitious project in the back of your head?
Not on that scale, let's say. But actually, this year alone, I premiered 3 separate concerti that were written for me. One by Gabriel Ortiz, and one by Thomas Larcher, and another by Richard Blackford. So this year was, I think, like 30 world premieres or something like that.
Wow.
No, sorry, 15 world premieres and 30 pieces written within the past 3 years.
Wow.
So there was a lot of music.
But that really does expand the repertoire a lot.
Yes.
Huh.
Yes, it does.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think we need to see if anybody has any questions. The lady in the front here with the... Oh.
No. Oh, thank you so much. That's the cello I have now. I'm not sure if it's the same one that it was in our last conversation, but it's a Montagnana, and it was made in 1723.
What happens when you change cellos?
Oh, it's a. I mean, let's say in a practical sense, the spacing on each cello is very different, so the intonation totally changes. So that's like you need time with the instrument to really see how it works, and even kind of the placement of the bridge is a bit different. And so I remember when I first started playing this cello, my bow kept hitting one of the corners of the bouts because the placement was so different on the cello I'd been playing previously. So that's, let's say, in a surface way. But then I think it took me a good 2-3 years to really get deep inside, yeah, and to see kind of what the possibilities were. And but that's the case with a lot of these Italian instruments, which are these sort of priceless Italian instruments, where there's just so much dimension and so much to open and discover.
Do they change as you play them?
It sounds far out, but yes. And I think they change based on who is playing them, and kind of the things that are brought out of them. Yeah.
Over here. She's coming around with a microphone so we can hear you.
Hello, hello. My question is, you spoke about when you start performing, you feel like you're meditating or like under the stars on a mountaintop. And I was wondering if you could speak to like how you cultivate that sort of mindset, or if that is just how you feel when you perform. Is that something you had to work on, or just like general advice about maybe performance anxiety?
No, for sure. The first thing I would say is to practice well, practice productively and very intentionally. It's very different than, I would rather have 2 hours of really intentional, kind of methodical practice than 8 hours of, looking around like this. It's and that kind of practice is counterproductive. So there's also a lot of visualization that you can do in your practice. So, for example, I mean, when I was talking about playing the complete Bach suites in the Elbphilharmonie, and it was something I was quite nervous about, actually, because it's a really important hall, and it was, all of the Bach suites of repertoire that so many people know really well and have a lot of opinions about and everything, and so I just kept visualizing myself in that space. And I also highly recommend playing for people who know you well, who would make you nervous. And because sometimes it's harder to play for people who know you well than it is to play for complete strangers. And so preparing for that, I did that quite a lot. So that when I got on that stage, I was just, I warmed up in there and, was visualizing all of these things. But when I started, I had butterflies, but it wasn't like a nervousness. It was just a kind of delight too, and kind of sparkly feeling.
When you say you visualize, what do you visualize?
Visualize the hall, visualize what it's going to feel like to be there, what's even kind of the distance between myself and the audience, and kind of visualizing trying to hear the silence of the hall before you start, because that's a very kind of pregnant moment. When the hush goes over, and then the sound that's being produced is from your own instrument.
Do you see color when you play music? I mean, we have with Fragments,
sure,
we're the audience seeing color,
see color.
But some people, there's an actual condition where they.
I don't have synesthesia.
Synesthesia or something
I don't have
like
it.
that?
No. No. It's not that specific. It's it's something. It's hard to describe. Yeah.
Right here. And then you could be next.
Was it intentional when you included the sarabands and the aimons at the same as the Bach sarabands?
I'm glad you caught that. It was intentional in the sense that I thought the music went very well together, but the fact that this title was saraband, and that was an obvious nod to Bach, but it wasn't necessarily a saraband in the sense that we have digested it to be. So, yeah.
Right here in the front, you.
So this is drilling down, but Caroline Shaw, and hearing the voice, that was both beautiful and brave for you to do that.
Thank you.
Have you worked with her before? vocal music and her violin composition, would that be a natural, have you worked with her before?
We've actually not worked together before at all. I mean, I've been an admirer of hers for a very long time, of course, and I know that she likes to employ that, the vocalise, but no, no, I have no vocal training at all. I just, my singing is for my kids and in the shower, basically, and also, and in Caroline Shaw's piece.
A friend of mine didn't quite get the title as we were going to one of your concerts and came up with an alternative, which I think might be the title for your next project in 5 years. And that was Fractures.
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 Okay.
And I have now come up with another one, which I think is Figments.
Figments. Oh, okay. I'll keep that in mind.
Anybody else here?
Over there.
This gentleman over here?
Yes.
The-
I've heard you do, seen you do, is the Tchaikovsky Rococo variations here. Stunning.
Thank you.
In Todd Palmer's arrangement for.
Yes.
I just wondered if you had any specific recollections about that, because it was a wonder to behold and hear and all.
About that specifically.
Yes.
No, so it was 2021, so it was still during COVID times and social distancing, and it was actually Jeff Nuttall's idea to do this Rococo variations arranged for cello and. Yes. Yeah. Most specifically, to answer your question, I mean, it's a piece that I play a lot. Of course, it's one of the cornerstones of the cello repertoire, and it's one of the first concertos that I played. But the specific thing that I remember was that, I mean, Jeff, of course, I mean, I've known since I first started coming here in 2003. So I mean, I was extremely close to him and to his family, and it was just such a delight to play this concerto, which I'd played a lot just with my friends. That's what it was like, and playing it in a chamber music kind of setting. And it was, and Todd Palmer and I also, we go back that far as well. Yeah, it was just a blast, like a big party on stage. It was great.
I'm wondering, because COVID has come up
Yeah.
throughout
Yeah.
and so on, and the criticism in the Washington Post was COVID poor. People were, especially creative people who needed an outlet, and you've talked about it, deeply in need of finding ways to communicate in spite of the isolation. And I'm just wondering about, is there a kernel of truth that this COVID need found its way into this music, and also whether or not you have any sense of a lasting impact now that we're forgetting about COVID. Is there still some lasting, concrete, important impact that COVID brought?
Well, there are a couple of things that we all had a lot of time to think, and I had more time at home with much slower days to just really think very deeply about what it, why is this art form important? And at a certain point, I was like, well, do I still think it's important? And then the answer was very clearly, yes, I think it's extremely important. And the act of being in a space and being in community and experiencing a live performance is something that is, it's kind of indescribable powerfulness, I think. And so I was thinking about that. And, something that I said to family and friends at that time was that, we were thinking about really what our priorities are, what's really important. So I think those are kind of, for me, I can't speak to what someone else might think, but that's what is, to me personally, lasting from that effect.
Do you still have those feelings now that we've sort of come out the other end? Do you think that they've impacted the way performance has developed since?
I think it's inevitable that it has, because it affected every single person on this planet, and so I mean, I think in conscious and unconscious ways.
So one way or another, we're not
one way or
just
another.
slipping back into the old.
No, I mean, it's impossible to imagine that we are. I mean, it's, you know, it happened, and it's something that we all experience, and it lasted a very long time. Yeah, and it's, you know, it's recent history. You know, it's quite fresh and raw.
Anybody else? You again?
Thank you. My last question was, do you have any like routines for like stretching, or like things that will keep your joints and limbs healthy enough to just play at a productive level? Because I have a lot of trouble with, I'm also a cellist, I have a lot of trouble with like my right shoulder and like, I don't know, I was just wondering if you have experience with that.
I think I mean, I would highly recommend doing yoga and, you know, keep being healthy and exercising, eating well and sleeping enough and all of these things. But I think it's really how you use your muscles when you're playing that is actually going to help you the most in kind of long term. And so it's not necessarily a stretching routine that you do before, although of course that it all helps. But something that I don't teach regularly, but when something that comes up sort of from time to time is that we often rely on our fingers, because the cello is a very big, unwieldy instrument, and it takes a lot of strength to play. And so that we're very often not getting the strength in the right place. And so really thinking about the strength coming from the feet and the legs and the kind of lower body, like the waist down, basically, as a kind of tree trunk. And that if you think of that sort of energy force coming from that place, and then that the shoulders and the arms are kind of like the branches that are floating above, that also, you even kind of internalizing that idea gives you more core in the sound, and also frees up the arms in a way that is, so you're not forcing, you know, from here, like so much of our instinct is just to do this, like if you want more sound, like to grab from the tricep, or, you know, just from the whole arm. And that's, the arm is actually maybe one of the weakest members of the body that when playing the cello. So try to direct that energy down, and that will really ground you, and see how that works. Yeah.
I think we should.
Oh, okay.
Did we have another one over
I think
here?
there's one more question.
I can't. Oh,
Yes.
the gentleman over here.
It was a charming evening. Thank you very much for sharing. I have a question about dance and ballet.
I don't know if I can answer that, but I'll try.
Are there plans in the future
For me?
to synthesize, to put your music to dance?
Not currently, but who knows? Yeah.
It's sort of like Fragments is getting closer
It
to
expands, yeah.
I think we should say thank you.
Thank you so
and
much.
I appreciate it.